Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Sachin Gupta, and I'll be host for today's roundtable discussion titled, Healthtech Acceleration Xpedition and Intersection of Healthcare and Technology. So today is a special curtain raiser webinar and roundtable discussion, which we have planned at Whitehall Hub, jointly with Apollo Hospitals, and we have some of the global thought leaders from India, Singapore, and UK who will be sharing their experiences and their vision about how technology is going to shape up and how Whitehall Hub and Apollo can jointly support health tech entrepreneurs, especially in India. So myself, I'm a doctor by training, and I'm co-founder of a company called Whitehall Hub. We are accelerator based out of Singapore. I'm also, head of strategy and innovation for this initiative. Along with me are four very eminent speakers, who don't need any introduction, but just for benefit of everybody, we'll just do a quick round of intro. Starting with Dr. J.S. Bamra. Dr. J.S. Bamra chairs British Association of Physicians of Indian origin, and he's based out of Manchester. He's a senior consultant psychiatrist and former director of NHS UK. Then we have Dr. Chirag Aditya. Chirag, again, is a physician and management consultant. He heads the healthcare practice for McKinsey in India. Then we have Dr. Hari Prasad, who is the president and CEO of Group CEO of Apollo Hospitals, and a very well-respected figure in healthcare globally. Then we have my co-founder and CEO of Whitehall Hub, Zafar. Yeah, over to Zafar.
Thank you, Sachin. Thank you for the introduction. Once again, thank you all for joining on this auspicious day of World Health Day. Before we begin, let's have a quick intro. I know most of our speakers are very well known. All of them are well known, in their own respective space. Let's have a quick intro from them. Our audience would like to know about themselves from them. And while they're introduced, please do share your point of view on today's topic. What do you think about how the technology, especially the evolving one that is in the artificial intelligence space, is changing the way healthcare is being delivered across the globe? What's your perspective on that? So let's start from Professor Bamra, and then we go on to Dr. Hari Prasad and Dr. Chirag after that. Professor Bamra, over to you.
Thank you, Zafar. Thank you very much, Sachin. Great pleasure to be here on this very special day, as you said. So WHO has been celebrating World Health Day for 52 years now, 71 years actually, since 1950. And this year, it's about building on fairness and making health more equitable. And so this is a really good theme, particularly because we know that with digital technology, we can transform health. So I'm a psychiatrist in Manchester. And as you said, I'm chair of the British Association of Physicians of Indian origin. This is a large organization, largely of Indian doctors, nurses, pharmacists, but also we have people from all origins as well as members. And also I've been a director of the BMA and medical director in the NHS, as has been said. I'm a pseudo-academic. I write papers, I research as well, and I speak. I invented an app for the NHS. It's called Chart My Health. It puts all investigations into the palm of your hand. Now, India has been doing this for a very long time, I know, but we haven't been very advanced in technology in the NHS, but we're getting up to speed. So I have a great interest in this because, as I said, the technology does not have any class, it does not have any religion, it doesn't have any creed, it just is there for everybody. So that's what impresses me about the work that Whitehall Hub does. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Over to you, Dr. Hari Prasad. Dr. Hari Prasad, you're on mute, and probably you want to unmute.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Good
Go ahead.
afternoon, and it's such a pleasure to be on this platform. And I'd like to congratulate Whitehall Hub for taking up this initiative and wish them the very best in the future. And I think they're doing it at the right time when technology, artificial intelligence, and all these new words which have evolved have started making healthcare look different, and are not only look different, you're going to see a different form of healthcare in the years to come. We've already seen a lot of transition happening from the traditional healthcare that we used to see for decades. And I think it's exciting times, and I mean, I just want to say it as an opening statement that healthcare, we live in a borderless world, and COVID has proved it that there are no borders for disease. It's gone all over the world from a small place in China. So it's truly a borderless world, and technology and digitization is also going to become borderless. What is born in one place is going to impact the rest of the world. And that's the impact Whitehall Hub or any of the people who are associated with it can create. And I am fortunate to be working with Apollo Hospitals as its president, and I'm actually very fortunate because it is, after the public health sector, it is the largest health sector in the country, in a country as huge as India. And on every World Health Day, we present the health status of the country based on our own data that's been been accumulated. We put artificial intelligence layers over it. And as I speak, I can see on my iPad, which is right next to this PC, there is a presentation going on the 2021 health status of India based on all this data and the analytics that have gone into it. So look forward to speak more on this session.
Thank you, Doctor. Over to you, Dr. Chirag.
Thank you, Zafar. Thanks, Sachin. And again, thank you for setting the session up. Could not be a better day to talk about health than on the World Health Day. I'm myself 𝐄𝐗𝐏𝐄𝐃 𝐈𝐓𝐕, partner with McKinsey. I lead a healthcare services work from McKinsey in India. I used to be a medical doctor, practice for a few years, and then shifted to consulting. I also now lead our digital health practice across Asia. I personally believe, I think last year was a watershed year in many ways in terms of health. I think a lot of us used to talk about health, but I think has never been the past for 200 days or at a stretch. Healthcare was on the front page of every newspaper in the country across the world. So I think healthcare has definitely got everyone to wake up and rise. What impact can it have? And I think this is going to have a big impact on how consumers behave healthcare. I think personally, I believe for long, I think one of the reasons of healthcare not doing very well or people not being very healthy is consumers not taking charge of their own health. I think that has definitely changed last year. I think even in terms of digital health, it was a watershed year. I think while the healthcare sector has always embraced technology, I think COVID forced everyone to really adopt digital health like never before. And this is true for US, this is true for Americas, Europe, Asia, Africa, every continent in the world, no different. So I think going forward, now that everyone's embraced and see the impact of digital, we'll see a lot more innovation happening and a lot more faster adoption amongst the physicians, amongst the patients, amongst the larger stakeholder community. So I believe personally very exciting times for digital health, and we'll see a lot of impact happening on healthcare because of this. So looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, panelists, for your introduction. I think picking up from there, Chirag, this is an interesting intersection, as you rightly said, that now the consumers have taken they've been more conscious than ever before when it comes to healthcare. The question to the panel now is, within the healthcare space, where do you see is the highest impact of the deep technology or the technology in general for the healthcare services? So where is that highest impact been felt in today's world, and what's the near future and the longer term of this story?
I'm happy to get the ball rolling, Zafar.
Yeah, thanks, sir.
I think, if I look back, and I think I've heard many people say that doctors never embrace technology, right? Or doctors are the slowest to embrace technology. I've heard many people say that. But if you think about it, right, I mean, doctors are very comfortable with CT scans, with ultrasound, with linear accelerator, right? So it's not that doctors not embrace technology. I think till now the technology focused a lot more on diagnostic and treatment. What doctor can control was within the hospital. I personally believe a lot more change is going to happen where technology is going to take healthcare out of the hospital or away from the doctor's hand to the consumer's hand as well. So I personally believe, if you look at India as well, right? I mean, cardiac diseases, diabetes, COPD will be one of the top 3 diseases of dialysis in India. I personally believe a lot of focus is going to happen in how do you manage chronic diseases over a longer period of time. With enabling the consumers while empowering the doctors. So creating an ecosystem of doctors and consumers and other stakeholders, bringing them together, but really also impacting the healthcare which gets delivered on a daily basis outside the hospital as well. So while the innovation within the hospital will continue to happen, it's been happening for the last many years. Going forward, I do believe a lot of this innovation will shift outside the hospital on how do you manage some of these longer-term lifestyle diseases to create a healthier world out there.
Perfect. Thank you, Chirag. I think that's an interesting point. Any additions, of Professor Dr. Hari Prasad? Where do you think the highest impact?
Taking off on Chirag's initial opening, I think we're going to see a future where beds are going to become irrelevant. You're not going to say that, I have so many beds and so many beds are required, because any statistics that you see so far, people say that India is short of so many beds and it needs so many more beds. But I think, as Chirag said, a lot of healthcare is moving outside the hospitals. And I would describe healthcare moving towards the 5 Ps. The 5 Ps are preventive healthcare, which is going to become a huge piece. The second P is personalized healthcare. We've seen that a lot of different diagnostic tools that have come in, and having understood the disease up to the level of the molecular level, we can actually now personalize treatments. The same sort of cancer doesn't behave the same way in 2 individuals, and the treatment can be based on the genetic composition of the basis of the disease. 2 different individuals with the same cancer could have a better outcome with 2 different forms of treatment. So it's definitely going to become more personalized. And the third P is precision. There is going to be a lot more precision in healthcare, and we've all seen a lot of things happening, like minimally invasive surgery, robotic surgery is becoming big these days. And then you have the various radiation techniques, cancer radiation techniques, with the proton also coming in, where it is becoming more and more precise. The treatment options are becoming more precise. The diagnostic options are becoming more precise. And the fourth P is proactive. We used to see people waiting for a later stage of the disease, and we used to very often see people coming in stage 3, stage 4 of cancers, or after having multiple MIs in a cardiac failure, coming into the hospital. But now it's going to become more proactive, where people are not going to wait for it to get into a very delayed stage, and I think that's going to be a big role. And the last P is people. I think so far healthcare, at least in India, has not involved the people as much as it should have involved in the past. So I think the people are going to take control of their own health, and we would, as healthcare providers, need to be aware of this fact, and we would need to be able to provide the people with all the information, the data, and the information that they're looking for. So I think the future is all going to be about this 5 Ps which I've just described, and anybody delivering value in these 5 Ps is going to create a lot of wealth.
Fantastic. Thank you. That was a very consulting framework, Dr. Hari Prasad, that you just brought in, the 5 Ps. I think it's quite relevant in that aspect. Professor, your word on this.
Yes. So, I think that is fantastic, because Chirag and Hari Prasad have set the stage for this. I think that this is true, that people are going to have to want to move out of hospital. Particularly with COVID, now people are afraid of going to hospitals. So I've spent all my life in hospitals, trying to treat patients in hospital or keep them out of hospital. But in the future, the public is going to want to stay healthy, and one is going to want to stay out of hospital. And digital technology can enable them to look after themselves. So, putting all of that together, what Chirag and Hari Prasad said. So I think the future is going to be in 6 different areas, if I may say that, Zafar. So the first is not just electronic health records, but I think I'm the first to coin a new word, integrated electronic healthcare records, where healthcare records are integrated with your investigations, your CT scans, your bloods, integrated health records will talk to another large health system in the NHS. There are so many different systems, and each of them, there will be breaking the boundaries between all these healthcare systems so that one set of technology can talk to another. Then, of course, with COVID, as we've seen, I've been consulting with patients who are sitting thousands of miles away from me, to be truthful. So telemedicine has taken a completely different shape, and patients are going to be demanding that, they don't travel to hospital to see their consultant or to their GP surgeries. They're going to say, well, look, we can't travel that far. That's going to help the environment as well, to be truthful, Zafar. So I read a statistic that 44,000 deaths have been avoided last year in the USA alone from road traffic accidents. There have been less people on the road. So inadvertently, we will help the environment as well. And that is the future of our children and our grandchildren. And of course, as Hari Prasad said, in terms of surgical technology, we've seen a completely different shape in the last few years with robotic surgery. I have a friend who does robotic colonic surgery, and he is absolute pioneer in the UK, and he does it very well. Then you have virtual 3D reconstructions in trauma, limbs and everything else. And you have devices that can monitor blood flow precisely, tell you where the clot is, where is the constriction, and that sort of thing. And of course, artificial intelligence, which we were going to talk about anyway, is going to be a major thing. Handheld devices that can make vessels more visible. I went to a place called NASCOM in Bangalore a couple of years ago, and it's amazing. They have absolutely crazy things that they do with robots. And then you have precision surgery, those very sensitive areas in the brain and the spinal cord, right down, to the core of the tumor or whatever the trauma might be, and the brain and the spinal cord. And we've already been using algorithms in terms of predicting diagnosis and that sort of thing. I'm not sure that we're quite there yet, Zafar, but it's going to get there. Then you have person-centered care, which is ECGs and falls monitoring and BP monitoring, tracking monitoring, Fitbits, which have been around for a bit, which will tell you the state of your heart. So all of those things. And finally, health apps. Just as my app, Chart My Health, is, they're going to be big. We have the track and trace app for COVID, and there are apps already for therapy and psychiatry, which are being used by patients. So all of these things I will add to the 5 Ps that Hari Prasad just mentioned.
Fantastic. It looks like we are getting into a very interesting space. Now we have 5 Ps, and as Dr. Chirag says, that now the technology is taking beyond hospitals, and that's an interesting space. If I may ask, personally, which technologies are you guys actually tracking and have high hope in next 5-10 years? Maybe we start with Dr. Chirag and then move on.
Sure. Zafar, I think personally, I'm actually what the technology I'm most excited about is actually the combination of connected devices and algorithms. I think Professor Bamraj started alluded to, right? I think we already have a lot of devices collecting a lot of data. You have Apple iWatch already connecting your heart rate, your pulse rate, your ECG at times sporadically. There are devices now we can actually go and connect your ECG. Devices can connect your respiratory rate. The device actually for a heart failure patient can actually connect the data on your edema, of the pulmonary edema, or how thick your skin is as well, right? So there's a lot of innovation happening on the connected devices. I think as humans start embracing a lot more technology, we'll see implants of these healthcare collection sensors happening at different parts of it. And someone started to put together using this data to start putting an algorithm, start predicting, right? Can we now go forward and predict when is the next heart failure going to happen, or when is the next complication going to happen? Can we, for a diabetic, predict when is the next hypoglycemic event going to happen, right? I believe once we start collecting a lot of this data through personal devices, start putting in algorithms, and there are startups out there who are already doing bits and pieces of it. I think once that starts coming together and once it starts giving information for us where we can have an intervention and can have impact, that's when you see the magic of digital health really bringing to the table, right? I think right now a lot of digital health is about reducing the cost and improving the convenience. I think if you are able to put this piece of the puzzle together, it also be improving clinical outcomes as well. So I think that's where I personally believe in managing chronic condition, in managing preventing the events to happen. How can we use connected devices and algorithms to predict and prevent and take the corrective action at that time? Definitely, I believe a lot of action is going to happen.
Interesting, and that's an area which is connected devices leading to the big data, and the big data leads to the analytics, and the algorithm that is playing the game is going to be definitely one of the biggest thing that's going to happen in the next few future. What do you think, Professor? What is your personal?
Well, absolutely.
So where are you tracking? What are you tracking nowadays?
Well, I completely, wholeheartedly agree with Chirag. I think it's going to be about people who want to be fit for the right reason. There's one step away from the blood monitoring for sugar. They will want to know that they are not going to become diabetic. How do they reduce their Q risk factor in order to prevent cardiovascular disease? How do they prevent themselves from having a stroke? What can they do? Because diabetes and obesity are the two epidemics in the world, and nations are affected more than anybody else. And we know that doctors are failing to pass the message to the public. I'm afraid we as medics have failed to do that, because this is a bubble that is getting bigger and bigger. And patients, the public, are more likely to listen to digital devices and things like that, digital messages. And I think prevention is the big thing. Prevention is where people are going to be focused on. So anything that helps people understand better their body. So there are two levels, really. So Zafar, I would say on the larger scale, that is where it is. On the smaller scale, as all of you have said, it is about us reducing the mortality of high-risk operations. Those cabbages, are they needed? Those brain tumors, how can you actually go right down to precisely, rather than blast the whole brain, how can you actually reduce the mortality of those severe mental illness, mental and physical illnesses, and with epilepsy as well? What can you do to change the course of epileptics and all these chronic neurological diseases?
Interesting. So anything which is a preventive, any technologies is going to bring light to the preventive side of the diseases will be that area that you focus. And as it's rightly said that if that could happen, then you have an impact on the overall healthcare ecosystem. The amount of dollars that you're going to save by not having them is enormous. Thank you, Doctor. That's pretty interesting. And we have an applied, you have an intelligence on connected devices, preventive, anything to do with the prevention of diseases. How about you, Dr. Prasad? Where are you tracking the technologies in the future?
Actually, there's a technology purge happening at this point of time. There's just so much of technology all over the place, and COVID has put people at home and started making them think about technology of various kinds. But I believe that any technology would be successful only if it delivers value to the stakeholders. And in my view, the first stakeholder is the patient or the general population, the human element of the community. That is the first stakeholder. The second stakeholder is obviously the provider, which is the doctor, the nurses, the entire healthcare personnel and the administration. The third stakeholder would be the payer. The payer are the guys. In India, even today, majority of them pay out of pocket, but there are a lot of insurance coming in, and there's the government which are paying for the healthcare of their people. So I think any technology which has an impact and creates value for the stakeholders is going to be there for on a sustainable basis. But any technology which is not going to create value is just a flash in the pan. And I believe that for people of the different varieties, for human beings, as I already said, people want to stay healthy, they want to prevent disease. So that is one aspect of it. Two, they want to use technology to diagnose a disease earlier, because diagnosing a disease earlier helps in reducing the cost of treatment. The ease of treatment is much higher, and also the outcomes are much better. So I think diagnosing earlier. And then the third thing is, as Professor Bumrah just said, making it more precise. For a brain tumor, you don't need to burn even a millimeter beyond the tumor. If we are again able to get in technology which is making it more precise and helping in improving the outcomes. And then the next thing is, people want to be connected with their physicians. People want to be connected with their healthcare providers even after they leave the hospital. And I think there again, technology is going to play a big role. And as Professor Bumrah said, a lot of people now want to get connected with healthcare. They don't want to come into hospitals. They want to get connected, but still get connected to the providers. And I think artificial intelligence is going to play a huge role in the future, especially in the chronic diseases. Even in this pandemic, even in a country like US where the highest number of deaths due to COVID have happened, COVID happens to be the third largest cause of death and not the first largest cause of death. Even in India, just 16, where the deaths are lower in COVID compared to many of the other countries, nearly 70% of the deaths are due to non-communicable diseases. And all these deaths, a majority of them are happening in the productive age group. So it is not only about losing a human being, it's also having a serious impact on the socioeconomic status of not just that family, but the entire community. So I think focus on non-communicable diseases superimposed with prevention, early detection, and appropriate treatment and follow-up using artificial intelligence, connectable devices, and whatever technology can add in. I think that's going to be the future of healthcare, and that's where technology is taking us.
Thank you, Doctor. I think you are again very interestingly brought us back to the 5 Ps. So any technologies around those areas will be the interesting space. Like you have been tracking about the technologies, there's a lot of discussion around ethical AI. We talked about artificial intelligence and we talked about AI bringing the best of what we could not achieve by human itself. Right? So considering where we are, and this is the very initial stage, and I would say it's an infancy stage. It will take shape in the next 30 years that is going to get more mature and then applications will keep coming back. So I think the question what we have on the table now is it the tech versus human or is it tech for the human? What do you think? Where is your thought process in this topic?
Also, Zafar, this is Sachin here.
Yes,
so I want to add, so I speak to many radiologists and pathologists who actually are worried that, with the AI playing a larger role in, pathology and radiology reporting in coming years. So my radiologist and pathologist friend are a bit afraid as to, is, AI going to take over their jobs or what?
Yes.
Yeah. So and this is for all the panelists. Yeah.
Again, you can assure all your friends that technology is never going to replace the human hand. That's never going to happen. All this artificial intelligence and everything else is just going to help the human hand improve care for the patient and improve things for the patient. But it is not going to replace the human care that a physician or the healthcare provider provides. So I think this thought of even a robot. Everybody believes that once a robot comes in, robot will start operating, but that's not true. The human hand is still the human hand which is running the robot. It is the human hand making the robot work, and that's going to be the thing when other thing with everything else that is going to happen. If somebody believes that the artificial intelligence or technology is going to diagnose, prevent, and treat illness, then they're not living in this world.
Nice. Nice way to sum that up. Dr. Chirag and Professor Bumrah, what's your take on that?
There's a very famous thing, that medicine is half science, half art, right? So exactly, and you can never get a machine or a robot to do the art part of it, right? So absolutely, I think it's technology for the humans and not the vice versa. And I think there's a natural evolution curve, right? You look at any industry, there's a natural evolution curve where technology takes over a repeatable, predictable task in a manner which just releases the capacity for humans to focus on more value-adding stuff, right? And some of that may happen, right? So some of the routine tasks may get, say, machine can solve for that, but that'll allow and enable and release a capacity for doctors and humans to really focus on a more valuable or more higher order task, right? So I think I'm a firm believer that technology is really going to enable and empower to get better care in lesser time, more accurately, and as more precisely and more personalized, as Dr. Hari mentioned earlier, right? Every human is different, right? With the new technologies coming in, we can figure out what disease dose titration required for this patient versus the other patient, right? What is the genetic profile of each other person? So we will see a lot more precise and a lot more accurate medicine coming in, and technology and AI will definitely play a big role in that, but it's not going to really impact any of the doctors. It's just going to empower and make them even more effective.
That's true. It's tech for the human rather than tech versus human. I take it that. Your views on that, Professor?
Zafar, I don't know. I'm going to disappoint you.
Okay.
I will be the devil's advocate, Hari Prasad and Chirag. I think that, as you know, just to take the incidence of India, 90% of India is rural. 90% of the doctors work in urban areas. There are no doctors in large parts of India. And so we are under-doctored. I don't think doctors need to fear, Sachin, that they will be out of a job. And there will always, I partly agree with Hari Prasad that you will need a doctor to produce those algorithms. You will need a doctor to say, to have that safe mechanism where you can say, well, this algorithm that the computer's produced is wrong. But I believe that the research I've seen is that the predictive value of some algorithms is higher than the diagnostic prowess or the expertise of consultants in some areas. And I think in the future you will see that we will not need that exponential increase in doctors because there will be precision of these digital ways of treating patients or giving them information. And of course, if we prevent illness, then you will need less doctors anyway. So I'm not against the idea that the world might need less doctors, but that's not going to happen for some time. There are lots of areas of Asia and Africa where there aren't enough doctors, to be truthful. So, but in this issue, I guess, it's about, and also, technology has advanced so much, there've been driverless cars, okay, there've been accidents with them, but the accidents have been far fewer, I believe, than with humans. My daughter bought a car the other day. It had something called park assist, and I couldn't believe it. She said, Papa, I just managed to park my car without actually doing anything. Yeah. And I was shocked. I said, even if I had park assist, I wouldn't use it, but she managed to do it. So medicine is going to become that sophisticated, I'm afraid. So, and in parts, it will be tech versus humans. It will be that RoboCop. It will be that, Terminator issue. I'm really sorry to tell you that. But I think there are always good cops and bad cops in medicine as well. And what I worry about with technology is precisely as my other colleagues are saying. And I worry particularly about governance and data. Your data, once it's there, it travels so far. I mean, the only reason why I didn't get an Aadhaar card was because as soon as I stood there to get my retinas implanted on this camera, I said, nahi chalega. Because that was when they had just started, by the way. And I prefer to have a PAN card than an Aadhaar card because that doesn't carry your data. And you never know how data might be used. And once it's there, it's impossible to erase digital imprint. So that is my worry. So there might be an issue that there are some bad cops who are going to use that technology for bad purposes.
Now, interesting. The reason I brought this question and the way the discussion went was a bit pleasantly surprising for me. There's no doubt technology is going to add value. When we move from a Stone Age to the modern age, when we first had a calculator, we had the same reaction to it, right? We said that, oh, come on, this is going to change the world and we lose all the jobs. Same thing, the period with the PCs and the computers started entering into offices and homes. People had the same fear that they're going to lose the job. Then came the internet, and now we're talking about Dr. Watson and all that. I think the question which I would like to pick you guys' brain is, where could we draw the line? Where do you think, and Professor has touched upon the topic of a bad cop and a good cop. There is an area of artificial intelligence is going into playing with the nature, like the people say, modifying your genes, trying things which is in some cases they are referred to as playing with the nature. Where do you think we should do we need to draw the line first? That's the first question. Because even without touching the line, there are hundreds and thousands of other things that we need to do before we can say that we are touching that line. Of course, we have a lot more enormous opportunity to use AI and make it work for humans. But like we are started to see, it is coming to that line where it's touching and changing the way things, the nature works. So, in your opinion, do we need to draw that line, that we need to have the boundaries of AI playing, or we should say let it go, and as it evolves, we will have more better opportunities for it? What are your take on that?
May I come in there, Zafar, before?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Before my esteemed colleagues Hari Prasad and Chirag come in. I think this is a really area that I worry about. So you try and convince a significant section of the public and even doctors that the virus wasn't produced by China purposefully in a lab in Wuhan. They're not going to believe you. There are large segments of people who think that there are some people who use medicine for the wrong reason. And I think that is an area that all governments are going to have to move on. There has to be better governance. It's very difficult to control the ethics in digital knowledge, digital appliances, and digital medicine, to be truthful. How that data might be used or misused, is very difficult to say just at the moment. And most of the people, thank goodness, have benevolent and very proper reasons to do whatever they're doing. And of course, doctors are mostly altruistic. But there might be other areas around this, and yes, I do worry about that. I think so. On the state levels, every government, and this should happen globally with WHO and other organizations, is there has to be better ethics. There has to be an accord, and people should be penalized for misusing data of patients and the public. That's my view.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. You're saying something, Doctor. Professor Bhamra, you were saying something.
No. I was just going to say, on the other side, I don't want to get away from the fact that I am very excited about. I don't want to be that spoiled sport that tells you that, I'm an old dinosaur that doesn't believe that technology has its massive uses. But we have to get the governance right. We have to get that protection of patients right.
Got it. Thanks. Dr. Chirag, Dr. Hari Prasad, your view on the ethical part of AI technology.
Look, my belief is this. I think at least I believe at least in India we are so far away right now for even providing the access. So I was talking to one of the founders recently, right? One of the digital health startup founders. He said the Telemedicine Act was being discussed for the last 10 years. It got passed in 10 days when the COVID struck, right? So I think there's a bit of a natural progression which happens with some of the things when you realize and the penny drops. Look, I think if he can go ahead of the curve and really put the guidelines, absolutely we should do that. But at least what I would not want to see, I would not see a lot of constraints and getting a lot of checks putting right now. I would love to see the entire digital health setup just unleash a lot more. I would love to see a lot more innovation happening. Let it flourish a bit more. Let it generally become from a panel discussion like this to actually go on the ground. Let it go with every villager out there, right? With 𝐸-Sanjeevani app. So I would personally love to see this entire digital health flourish a lot more. Absolutely, in the parallel, we should be having the right discussions, what the right guidelines, and hopefully next time it doesn't take the 10 years to pass the next guideline. But I would imagine these are two parallel processes, right? While the innovation should flourish, we should completely not put any, let the entrepreneurs create something new. in the background, I agree. I think we should start thinking of what are checks and balances. Are they learning what's happening with the deep fakes? What's happening with social media? I think what are the learnings and how do we start putting some guardrails? But again, in a manner that it doesn't really curtail the innovation and doesn't really compress the entrepreneurial spirit of taking digital health and really making it a mass phenomena.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Chirag. Dr. Hari, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, I worry about it from the other end of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
While the worry has been about how the data would be used and the unethical use of the data and regulations for data, my worry currently is we are not collecting data in the format it should be collected. Data which is not, intelligently collected in the format which it should be collected will not be useful data. And for creating any algorithms, for creating any artificial intelligence, I think we need to have a standardized mechanism of collection of data. And unfortunately, that does not exist. Each country has its own standards. But I guess in India, there are no standards at this point of time. So I think I worry about the manner in which we are not collecting data in the right way. And this is a huge loss because this is actually preventing a lot of technology from being developed. Because India, is a huge country, and what happens, the volumes that happen in India happens in no other part of the world. So if we are not really able to garner this data where so much of work is happening and make sense out of that data, I imagine that we are losing a lot of value for the future. I worry from that perspective.
Agreed, and I think it's a valid worry, actually, because we're yet to get there in most part of the world, especially in the emerging side of the world, that technology is not used enough in the current context, and it may not be used enough in the next few decades. But eventually, we're going to get there, and that's probably the prompting question of what ethical lie. We're coming to the last 15 minutes of our session, so I would like to take our attention towards the segment about the startups. 𝐄𝐗𝐏𝐄𝐃 𝐓𝐎 has taken that the mandate. It's a mission for us that we will be serving them underserved startups who are trying to make a difference in this part of the world. So, a couple of questions on that topic. Where do you think? If you go by the formula that follow the money, where do you think the money and the fund that has been the highest or the significantly visible when it comes to investing in the smaller scale startups or innovative ideas? What have you seen in the recent past where these startups have been funded? Please give your thoughts on that. Maybe we should start with Dr. Chirag and then we go down. Yeah?
Yeah. So, Zafar, I think digital health was definitely one of the most funded areas, right? If you just look at some of the numbers, last year in 2020, we almost saw $35 billion of funding happening in digital health in the US. $35 billion happened in digital health in the US, right? Much, much higher than 2019. And even in the first quarter of this year, it's almost 7 billion already, right? Almost double of last year, right? So I think this is definitely picking up. I was trying to look at and analyze some of the numbers. Out of 35 billion, 20 billion actually went in cardiovascular diabetes space, right? So more than half actually is going in the cardiovascular diabetes space. I think additional 5 to 7 went in the respiratory and then the mental health illnesses, right? So clearly, right? If you look at the actual numbers, it's going towards chronic diseases, cardiac, neurological, respiratory, diabetes, stroke. So I think India is behind the curve compared to US in terms of the digital innovation in some aspects, but at least I do believe that we'll see a lot more funding going in. I think till now a lot of funding has gone on basic services like telemedicine, e-commerce. I would see as we evolve, as the digital health ecosystem evolves, we'll start doing a lot more on disease management, being more specific on the disease areas as well, as what is in US, right? That's my personal my sense, and that's what's going to happen, right? So more generic convenience and access services to everyone, to gradually getting more and more specialized and more nuanced and more precise and personalized.
Thank you, Doctor. So you mentioned $35 billion spent in the US. how does it reflect to our part of the world in Asia? Do you see something significant numbers coming up in healthcare space, and where
It is
is
coming up. Yeah, it is coming. I think in last year, I think India saw around a 3.7 billion PE investments going across the entire healthcare spectrum, right? A bulk of that still went in pharmaceuticals. Some of them went into providers, hospitals, and I think very small portion went to digital health, right? Less than 20% of that, right? So I think India is following the direction, I would say. But I think this quantum, of course, is a long way to follow. But I think if you talk to any investor, right, I think health is actually right up the alley in terms of their interest areas, in terms of where they want to invest. Again, a lot of money is flowing on established companies right now, especially for the private equity players. But we do talk to any venture capitalist, everyone has few healthcare companies in their portfolio and everyone's looking at the space. In India, I think what's happened, Zafar, I think the companies haven't really scaled up beyond the online pharmacy. So I think there's a question mark. But again, I think post 2020, a lot of those things are changing. Right? I mean, HealthFlix raised the money recently. A lot of telemedicine platforms, the money is raised recently, right? So I would imagine we'll follow a very similar curve, and we'll see digital health becoming bigger and bigger. And I think one change I'm seeing is actually the investment is actually not only coming from investors. A lot of this investment is coming from corporates as well. Large pharma companies, large provider chains. They're also looking and saying, how do we increase our strength or our offerings to the consumers? And for a lot of them, it's easier to acquire a company rather than trying to do this in-house, right? So we'll see a lot of corporate investment also going in the digital health space by established players, both on pharma side, provider side, health insurance side. So I will see a lot of more of that happening as well.
Thank you, Dr. Chirag. That's very useful insights. And I think you mentioned about the corporate investments, and Dr. Hariprasad, Apollo has been doing a lot of investments in the startups in the recent past. Where is the interest lies? Where is the actual investment being made, and where do you think on the contrary, where it should be spent?
Yeah. First of all, I mean, my perception of the whole thing, having understood a bit of the startup world, is that a lot of dollars are being burned in the name of startups.
Yes.
And resources are limited, dollars are limited, and I don't think we should allow that to happen. And I read somewhere a statistic saying that only 1 out of 10 of these startups are really becoming successful and delivering something to the community. So I think my diagnosis of the problem is startup for the sake of doing something is not going to be successful. Startup needs to deliver value to the stakeholders, and that value you cannot understand what value I need and I will perceive as value. You need to go to the person, the stakeholder, and find out what he is looking for as value. So unless you work with the industry right from the time of conceptualizing your product or service or whatever you're trying to do, you're not going to really make it. So I would very strongly urge any of these startups to start interacting with the stakeholders right from the moment they decide to do something, and have the stakeholder as a part of their entire initiative. An initiative without the stakeholder being a part of it is more likely to fail than succeed. For example, yesterday, there was a gentleman who came up. There was a startup, and it was a good reason that he started it off, because now the PCs and laptops and all these are coming without a DVD player or a CD player. Most of them don't have it. Yeah. So the traditional way of looking at an angiogram was, it moved from that cassette which used to be used for an angiogram to a DVD, and DVD players are no more available. So he was a very smart guy to identify the problem, but he came up with a solution where he created a card and a card reader. And I said, this is very good, this is very innovative, and this could probably solve the problem of hospitals, because apart from buying the PC, they're having to buy the DVD player separately to be able to connect to the system, and you can't actually see the CD where there's a PC. You'll have to find a PC which has the DVD drive player. Then I asked him the cost. He said the cost of the reader would be about 800 to 900 rupees, and each card would cost about 800 rupees. Then I said, you must be joking. because you're providing a solution for 1,600 rupees, what was otherwise coming for 10 rupees. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. So we need to make sure that, whatever the problem was real, the solution was good, but probably the way it was positioned and the way it was done was wrong. Had they gone to the provider right up front and tried to understand what is to be done, they would have got to come up with a more cost-effective solution, which would have been which is actually the need of the hour.
Correct. Thank that's. But in terms of the value chain of the healthcare services, where do you think the money is being spent, and where the startups are coming up? Whether it's the radiology, delivery of medicines, or
See, a lot of things. Last 1 year, at least in this part of the world, a lot of money has gone into the telemedicine platforms and the e-health platforms. A lot of money has gone into those platforms, and I think the fittest are going to survive. Most of these are not going to survive, and there'll be a small percentage which would survive once this pandemic is over. And because at the end of the day, as I said, it's never going to be a replacement. It's going to be only adding value to what a human hand can do. So this e-health platforms are the main investment at this point of time. But I guess it needs to change into a lot of things which Chirag spoke about, Professor Bumrah spoke about, into predictive, into analytic, into proactive, into preventive, into disease management, into actually home health care, wearable devices. So there are multiple other areas which are actually more sustainable than these e-health platforms which have come up in big time, and a lot of investment has gone into them at this point of time.
Thank you, Doctor. Professor Bumrah, where do you think that money is being spent nowadays?
I mean, I agree with everything. Funny, isn't it? I agree with everything my fellow panelists are saying as well. And this time I will not be devil's advocate, because I think it's really important that startups, I think, they have amazing ideas, isn't it? I agree also with Chirag that we don't want to be stifling innovation. One way to stifle innovation is to put boundaries on it, put too many barriers into it. These guys, and girls who are just sat in the back room and just work out ideas, they come up with just some amazing stuff. I mean, we produced Aperta Foundation, which is a not-for-profit organization in the UK. We produce a platform called Open Eyes, which is really taking the NHS by storm. It's free. It's available to anybody, and it's something that is changing things for eyes, particularly because of the way that it works in terms of reducing eye disease and all that sort of thing. Now, but again, I think that as Dr. Hari Prasad was saying, there is a note of caution, isn't there, Zafar and Sachin, which is that startups, to give them a leg up, they need an organization that has a genuine interest in them. And that is the difficulty is, there are so many organizations which will either exploit what they've got, take it over and, run with it and leave them alone, or they will just give them, they will not provide them with the support they need and demoralize them and all that. So startups need a proper platform in order to take this forward. And there was something that Dr. Hari Prasad said, which also struck a chord with me. So, we've been doing a lot of these conferences like this one. Strangely enough, a lot of the platforms are coming from India, and some of them are not really good at all, So I don't know how they are getting out, and, sometimes they just create conference platforms which collapse. They can't cope with the traffic. As soon as you exceed 400, they've collapsed. And the imagery isn't very good either. So I think there will be some things, and many of them will be startups, because before last year, who had heard about Zoom? None of us had heard about Zoom. And since then, there are millions of Zoom companies coming up, So I think, yes, I think they need they're handheld, they need to be supported, they need proper organizations. Again, going back to governance and ethics.
Thank you, Doctor. We are coming to the last 5 minutes of the session. So, any concluding remarks, Dr. Chirag, Dr. Hari Prasad, then Professor Bambra?
No, I think very, very interesting time. I think we are in space of digital health, which is going to see a lot of innovation, a lot of disruption, a lot of exciting times. A lot of unmet needs will get solved across cost, quality, clinical outcomes. I think I was recently having a discussion on how does a corporate look versus startup. And the biggest reason startups fail actually is distribution. I think the magic will happen when we see some of these larger corporates partnering with some of the startups, and already we're seeing some of this happen to really bring the best of new age thinking, new age technology, new age disruptiveness, unconstrained thinking, along with the right governance, right ethics, right distribution network of a corporate. And I think when this two comes together, I think really the magic will start happening, right? So I personally believe a lot of this amalgamation of startup and corporate is going to happen, especially in healthcare. And already, if you look at some of the larger players globally and in India, are entering into health space as well. So I think personally, very exciting times. I think it's a fantastic time for clinicians, fantastic time for the patients, and a fantastic time from the government and the payers and the providers, right? We will see right care getting delivered at the right price at the right time. So very excited to see this action happening next few years.
Thank you, Dr. Chirag. So, Dr. Hari Prasad, any concluding remarks?
I think as Chirag said, the times are really exciting, and when I get into a chat like this, I try to wear multiple hats and think about it. First, as a common man in the community. Second, as a patient who has undergone treatment for an illness. Third, as a doctor who has treated patients. And fourth, as a hospital administrator who is looking after patients across multiple locations. Now, what we need a lot of innovation. There are plenty of challenges. We do face, there's not a day passes where we don't hope for a better thing, for a better solution for a particular challenge that we're facing on that particular day. So I would actually encourage all these startups to start working with institutions, to start working with our organizations, and get involved with them and be partners with them right from the beginning. And that will ensure that you're moving towards the right solution. And two, adoption of the solution will become that much easier for you when you get the solution done. So I would encourage a lot of these startups and a lot of these people who are actually investing to make sure that they're investing into a service or a product where there is a strong backing of a healthcare system or a pharma system, depending on the product, of the industry backing needs to be there. And that is where I would put my money if I had it.
Thank you, Dr. Hari. Professor Bambra.
So, yes, I haven't got very much to add. I think those are very wise words from both Chirag and Hari Prasad. Right price, right time, right place, as Chirag was saying. I think that is absolutely true. And as Hari Prasad is saying, I think what startups need is that leg up, isn't it? But they must know the market. It's a global market. You can travel with your product far. Something will be very local, but a lot of things that, as Ronald Reagan said, you ain't seen nothing yet, because this digital, we haven't seen the full potential of what digital medicine in its entirety can do to transform healthcare. So they have to know the market, they have to know who their investors are, and then they have to develop the product. So I would say, make sure that you're going with a bona fide product to a bona fide company.
Thank you, Professor. Concluding remarks, Dr. Sachin.
So I think, I'll just like to thank everyone for their time. So thank you, Dr. Bambra, Dr. Hari Prasad, Dr. Aditya, Dr. Chirag. And special thanks to, Voice of Healthcare team who have put up this show for us at their platform. And also Dr. Naveen, Chair of Voice of Healthcare, who was supposed to join but had to go for emergency meeting at last moment. And also, we'd like to invite, I can see, there are, few hundred startups who have joined us for this webinar today at 3 platforms of Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So we'll like to invite you to, partner with us. We are here to support you. There is a global team. So there is Whitehall Hub in Singapore. And, we have Apollo Hospital as our partner in India. Voice of Healthcare in India is supporting it. And Dr. Bamra, who chairs BAPIO, is there to support us in UK. And Dr. Rahul Garg, who is also our co-founder at Whitehall Hub, is based out of North America. So we have, for Indian startups, we are going to open your doors for the world. So, so do reach out to us. We'll partner with you.
No, one last comment. I think officially, Dr. Sachin, we do like to know that there are what I didn't know how many startups have joined this organization. I can't see the statistics here, but with this webinar, we are officially launching the first cohort of our HACS program. HACS program is an Health Acceleration Xpedition. It is going to be a journey which we want to work with late stage technology startups who are focusing on an impact areas in healthcare space. We formally invite them to apply for joining our journey. The applications are going live as we speak, and it will be closed by 30th of April. We're inviting applications from the startups across the globe who are working in an impact areas in healthcare using the technology, and who have already been in the business for a year or two. So that means we are focusing on the late stage startups who now have come to that stage that they have a high potential for scaling. That's the time where we wanted to come in and help them scale, take to the next level of their journey. So with this webinar, we have officially opened the applications. Please feel free to go and log in and apply for it. And thank you, Dr. Hari Prasad, Dr. Chirag, Professor Bamra. It has been immense. It was my pleasure that having a conversation with you. Very, very interesting and useful insights. And I'm assuming this the recorded webinar will be going in circles. So I'm hoping, and a lot of them will be highly appreciative of your thoughts. Thank you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
for having us.
Yeah,
Thank you, and bye-bye.
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 Bye-bye.